Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, Chapter 13, How to Turn a Crisis into a Creative Situation. Number 2, Part 2, Shadowboxing for Stability. Gentleman Jim Corbett made the word shadowboxing popular. When asked how he developed the perfect control and timing for his left jab, which he used to cut John L. Sullivan, the Boston strong boy, to ribbons, Corbett replied that he had practiced throwing his left at his own image in the mirror more than 10,000 times in preparation for the bout. Gene Tunney did the same thing. Years before he actually fought Jack Dempsey in the ring, he had fought an imaginary Dempsey more than 100 times in the privacy of his own room. He secured all the films of old Dempsey fights. He watched them until he knew every one of Dempsey's moves. Then he shadowboxed. He would imagine that Dempsey was standing before him. When the imaginary Dempsey would make a certain move, he would practice his counter move. Sir Harry Lauder, the famous Scottish actor and comedian, once admitted that he had practiced a certain routine 10,000 times in private before ever giving the perfect performance publicly. Lauder was in fact shadowboxing with an imaginary audience. Billy Graham preached his sermons to cypress stumps in the Florida swamp before developing his compelling platform personality with live audiences. Most good public speakers have done the same thing in one way or another. The most common form of shadowboxing for public speakers is to deliver their speech to their own image in the mirror. One man I know lines up to 6 empty chairs, imagines people sitting in them, and practices his speech on the imaginary audience. Easy practice brings better scores. When Ben Hogan was playing tournament golf regularly, he kept a golf club in his bedroom and daily practiced in private, swinging the club correctly and without pressure at an imaginary golf ball. When Hogan was on the links, he would go through the correct motions in his imagination before making a shot, then depend upon muscle memory to execute the shot correctly. Some athletes practice in private with as little pressure as possible. They or their coaches refuse to permit the press to witness practice sessions, and even refuse to give out any information concerning the practice for publicity purposes, in order to protect themselves from pressure. Everything is arranged to make training and practice as relaxed and pressure-free as humanly possible. The result is that they go into the crisis of actual competition without appearing to have any nerves at all. They become human icicles, immune to pressure, not worrying about how they will perform, but depending on muscle memory to execute the various motions which they have learned. The technique of shadowboxing or practicing without pressure is so simple, and the results are so striking, that some people are inclined to associate with some sort of magic. I remember a dowager, for example, who for years had been jittery, felt ill at ease in social situations. After practicing shadowboxing, she wrote me, I must have practiced making a grand entrance in my own empty living room 100 times or more. I walked down the room shaking hands with innumerable imaginary guests. I smiled and had something friendly to say to each one, actually saying words out loud. Then I moved about among the guests, chatting here and there. I practiced sitting, walking, talking, gracefully and self-confidently. I cannot tell you how happy I was, and I might say somewhat surprised at the wonderful time I had at the ball. I felt relaxed and confident. Several situations came up which I had not anticipated nor practiced, but I found myself ad-libbing them admirably. My husband is so sure that you had worked out some sort of mumbo-jumbo on me. Shadowboxing turns on self-expression. The word express literally means to push out, to exert, to show forth. The word inhibit means to choke off, restrict. Self-expression is a pushing out, a showing forth of the powers, talents, and abilities of the self. It means turning on your own light and letting it shine. Self-expression is a yes response. Inhibition is a no response. It chokes off self-expression, turns off and dims your light. In shadowboxing, you practice self-expression with no inhibiting factors present. You learn the correct moves. You form a mental map which is retained in memory, a broad, general, flexible map. Then, when you face a crisis, when an actual menace or inhibiting factor is present, You've learned to act calmly and correctly. There is a carryover in your muscles, nerves, and brain from practice to the actual situation. Moreover, because your learning has been relaxed and pressure-free, you will be able to rise to the occasion, extemporize, improvise, act spontaneously. At the same time, your shadow boxing is building a mental image of yourself, acting correctly and successfully. The memory of the successful self-image also enables you to perform better. Dry shooting is the secret of good marksmanship. A novice on the pistol range will quite often find that he can hold the handgun perfectly still and motionless, as long as he's not trying to shoot. When he aims at an empty gun at a target, his hand is steady. When the same gun is loaded and he attempts to make a score, purpose tremor sets in. The gun barrel uncontrollably moves up and down, back and forth, in much the same way that your hand tremors when you attempt to thread a needle. Almost to a man, all good pistols coaches recommend lots of dry run target shooting to overcome this condition. The marksman calmly and deliberately aims, cocks and snaps the handgun at a target on the wall. Calmly and deliberately he pays attention to just how he is holding the gun, whether it is canted or not, whether he is squeezing or jerking the trigger. He learns good habits calmly. There is no purpose tremor because there is no over-carefulness, no over-anxiety for results. After thousands of dry runs, the novice will find that he can hold the loaded gun and actually shoot it while maintaining the same mental attitude and going through the same calm, deliberate physical motions. A friend of mine learned how to shoot quail in much the same manner. A good shot on the skeet range, the roar of a quail as he took off, and his anxiety for results or overmotivation caused him to miss almost every time. On his next hunt, and after learning about shadow boxing, he carried an empty shotgun the first day. There was no need to get excited because he couldn't shoot anyway. No need for overmotivation because when you're carrying an empty gun, no need for overmotivation when you're carrying an empty gun. He quote unquote shot some 20 quail that day with the empty gun. By the time he had made his first 6 shots, all anxiety and jitteriness had left him. His companions thought he had lost a few of his buttons, but he redeemed himself the next day when he killed his first 8 birds and got a total of 15 quail out of 17 shots. Shadow boxing helps you hit the ball. Not long ago, I visited a friend of mine one Sunday in the suburb of New York. His 10-year-old son had visions of becoming a big league baseball star. His fielding was adequate, but he couldn't hit. Every time his father threw the ball across the plate, the boy froze up and missed it by a foot. I decided to try something. You're so anxious to hit the ball and so afraid you won't that you can't even see it clearly. All that tension and anxiety was interfering with his eyesight and his reflexes. His arm muscles weren't executing the orders from his brain. For the next 10 pitches, I said, don't even try to hit the ball. Don't try at all. Keep your bat on your shoulder, but watch the ball very carefully. Keep your eyes on it from the time it leaves your daddy's hand until it goes by you. Stand easy and loose, and just watch the ball go by. After 10 trials of this, I advised him, now for a while, watch the ball go by and keep the bat on your shoulder. But think to yourself, you're going to bring the bat around so it will really hit the ball, solidly and dead center. After this, I told him to keep on feeling the same way, and to keep watching the ball carefully, and to let the bat come around and meet the ball, making no attempt to hit it hard. The boy hit the ball. After a few easy hits like this, he was knocking the ball a country mile, and I had a friend for life.